Bahrain has done, especially in this pandemic, giving free care, free treatment, free checkup, and everything, and the goodie bag you get with if you're infected and stuff, and the hospital and all that, which government has done? None.
Mm, mm.
Free month, free electricity and water. His Majesty the King and the Crown Prince, they have been doing the max they can. What was the biggest empire in the world? British Empire. Your ticking clock is from the time when the Jews returned to Jerusalem. People on that day will say, "Take my wife and take my kids, but spare me the mess or the horrors of this world."
In our complicated, fast changing, advanced world, a relatively large proportion of our collective consciousness is oriented towards accepting the concept of eschatology. It is a part of theology concerned with the final events of history or the ultimate destiny of humanity. This concept is commonly referred to as the end of the world. After all, the fear of nuclear catastrophe has amplified the fear worldwide in fluctuating degrees of high intensity for over 7 decades now. Political and religious extremism of various layers has steadily increased along with global poverty levels, while the scientific community has justifiably raised the alarm over global warming due to deforestation, overconsumption of resources, and worldwide industrialization. Consequently, we are highly drawn to things that feed into our common fears of mental disturbance. Things going around the world alarms us to question ourselves that are we in the safe place? Are we leaving this world for next generation with a promising future or destroying it? Today we are discussing the possible future events from the history, patterns and prophecies of Final Messenger. I got an opportunity to interview one of the Middle East talents, Omar Al Muhammad, who is passionate about today's subject matter. Known for his first voice controlled smart home digital technologies, featured in Middle East, Forbes magazine and international TV channels. Also professional nutritionist and natural skincare advisor, career and branding expert, and founder of Gafarado, Bahrain's luxurious first voice controlled smart home technology. Okay, so my next guest is Omar Al Muhammad, one of my mentor and teacher and friend, and has been great support. So let us know a bit background from his side, like how he is doing in the modeling, whether it is in the nutrition, whether it is in any kind of knowledge he has to share today, especially eschatology. So it will be a great day and most controversial, maybe. We will try not to be. So over to you, brother Umar Muhammad.
Okay. Thank you so much for the very kind words. You've introduced like a lot of things about me, so I don't know which one do you want me to touch on.
Yeah.
I'll just give you a brief. It's basically like I was born here in Bahrain, and I was my primary education is in Bahrain. Uh, while growing up, like I mean, I didn't have something in mind that I would become something someday. So it was just like go with the flow kind of thing. My father wanted me to be an engineer and or at one point a pilot. My mom wanted me to be a doctor. I didn't turn out to be any of them. But then now the knowledge I have is like fitting in everything basically. Um, with regards to eschatology, I started off with something like why do we have so many religions and why people are not on the same thing? Why people follow different religions and stuff. So that was a curiosity factor, and this is where, like, not only in religious side, but in the other sides as well, I was curious. There was a point where I was 115 kilos. So I wanted to lose weight, but I didn't want to depend on somebody else. So I took up courses myself. I learned myself, like how do I lose weight and maintain it, and I could help people. So it's like gaining knowledge and teaching people about that. Same thing goes about religion as well. I wanted to learn something myself, analyze it, because that's the biggest power which God has given you is thinking ability, which other religions don't have. Especially in Islam, we have thinking ability, analyze everything. You can question everything and reach your conclusion based on the logic and what proofs we have. So everything can be proven in Islam, and that's the best part of it. So I went into like learning about Christianity, about Judaism, about Hinduism, about Shintoism, about Zoroastrianism, and then about the various sects in Islam. So when I got over and done with it, that was back in like 2013, 2014. Now, since then, like I started working or studying basically on eschatology, like what exactly is going to happen, why exactly is it going to happen, how is it going to happen, and how does it connect with the events. You see, the biggest thing is the missing link. The Quran and the Hadith have given you dots to connect. And the work of the ulama and the scholars is basically to connect all of these dots and present it to you, which unfortunately has not happened in the past few decades because we have been so involved with worldly stuff and with conflicts and politics that we don't really analyze what exactly is going on. There are very few people who actually can do that. But then it turns out to be the question that should you be political, or should you be diplomatic, or should you be religious, you know? So it's like trying to balance all of this. This is the main part when it comes to eschatology. How do you balance it out? So this is what I was focusing on until today, and I will be focusing for the next few years. I mean, I do teach people as well about it, like, you know, the events unfolding and how it connects with Islam and the predictions and stuff.
Yeah, it's
So,
just
yeah.
connection or just trying to know what is eschatology, right? And usually some use it as a pattern understanding, whether it is pattern understanding or it is because of the history. How do you measure and how do you really know the thing, yani, when it comes to eschatology?
See, eschatology as a word, it means the events which will take you down to the day of judgment, the events which are going to happen. So you have to see that there's eschatology in Judaism as well, and then there is in Christianity as well, and then there is in Islam as well. So which one, how exactly, what is the time frame and everything, you have to analyze. So it's not something which you could do it within a few days or a few weeks or a few months. It takes you years to be able to understand that. For me, it took me about like 8 years or so. For some people, it would take them much longer, depending on their access or their understanding of the background, like, you know, the background information. Like, for example, when we talk about the Ya'juj and Ma'juj, Gog and Magog, who are they exactly? Where exactly are they? How do the events unfold previously? What's the background of it? Who are they? Like, as in, are they humans? Some people think they're aliens, and some people would think they're humans, and some people would think they would come from Mars or somewhere, or they're hidden behind a wall, for example. But there are a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, which actually tell you that the time at that time was near. So if at that time, at the time of the Prophet, when it was near, what happened 1,400 years down the line? Where are they? You know, and how is it going to unfold? So you have to have your basic understandings right. You have to have your Islamic knowledge firm. You have to like look into each topic and see how does it connect in Islamic books before you can connect it to the world events, what is happening right now. So this is how it works. So you have to have a
then
proper
you will
analysis.
be able to like predict what is going to come.
Yes, because this is, look, this is all in a hadith, and it gives you the time frames as well. But we don't really focus on the time frames. For example, there is a hadith of the Prophet which actually says, count 6 things. First, my death. Second, the conquering of Jerusalem. Third, the Constantinople. The fourth is if you give somebody 100 dinars, it would still seem less, which is the case these days. And the other 3 events have happened, so these are the 4 events. And the 5th event is, what's it called? A disease which spreads in a way where it'll kill people like sheep, which is where we are right now with the coronavirus, right? And then the 6th thing, which is the coming of Isa alayhi salam. So you have these 6 things mentioned. Now, you see the timeline, it's giving you sections, right? So it gives you one of those things. Then it tells you in the hadith of the Prophet itself that when you see Iraq split into 3, get ready for Yawm al-Qiyamah. And when did Iraq split into 3? 2006. Sunni Shi'i Kurd. So the time is near. To prove you from the Quran, it says in the Quran that when the promise of the Day of Judgment comes nearer, we will gather you from everywhere. Basically the Jews, into Jerusalem. So it tells you clearly in the Quran, nobody had a clue that the Jews are going to come back to Israel for 2,000 years, nearly 2,000 years. But when you read the Quran, it tells you that near Day of Judgment, they will come back. But did we read? Did we understand? No, we didn't. We just took it at the face value, or just something which we need to recite, or something we need to know tajweed, or the pronunciation, or everything, and we just overlook the real meaning of it.
Main things are missed out.
Exactly. Exactly.
So you have made it clear about eschatology. Of course, it's a depth subject. Uh, how about some examples, if you can share, so that things are clear, more clear for people before we jump into main things, Yani?
Look, you have three main things which are pending to make people really understand what it is.
Mm,
You have Ya'juj and Ma'juj. Who are they? What are they? Where are they?
mm,
When are they going to come?
mm,
That's one. Then you have the biggest fitna, which humans are going to be faced with in history, which is the coming of the Antichrist, Dajjal, Masih Dajjal. And then you have the third one, which is Isa alayhi salam himself.
mm.
And then after the coming of Isa alayhi salam, he rules for 40 years, and after his death, it's 7 years down to Yawm al-Qiyamah.
Okay.
So it's ends at the coming of Isa alayhi salam. All the confusion ends there. That's where you have the
Yeah.
Sunnis and Shias united. You have no more Jews, or they all follow Isa alayhi salam, and then you have the Christians following Isa alayhi salam, and so on. And then you have the biggest fight of Ya'juj and Ma'juj, whereby you have a nuclear war, basically. You know, so these are the three main things which people need to understand. What does it exactly mean? Why, how, where, when, and the other ahadith which linked to this. For example, there would be a death of a khalifa, and three princes will fight for where your treasure is. Okay. Now, some people would say that ulama, the way they have said, that they will fight for where your treasure is. There is treasure under the Kaaba, which these three princes are going to fight for. That's not what the hadith says. Because if there was treasure, the Prophet would have said it clearly.
Yes.
So where did we get that from? You know? So you have to look at that. When the Prophet, when he says, they will fight for your treasure. What is the treasure for the Muslims? Is the Kaaba itself. They will fight for the control of the Kaaba.
Wow.
So see which one of them is going to become the king. So that's what it's talking about. It's not talking about a treasure under the Kaaba, because they've dug the Kaaba like for 1,400 years. They found nothing. Which treasure are they going to suddenly find, which is going to pop out from I don't know where, and they're going to fight for it? This is something which we have in traditions, that there was once a treasure hidden there, and people have taken out everything. I mean, they've dug up the mummies of the pharaohs and taken out everything, and they would spare the Kaaba, like the robbers and everything, in the last 1,400 years? Of course not. The Prophet would have said it if there was any sort of gold or treasure hidden under there. So it's your treasure for the Muslims, which is the Kaaba itself.
Wow.
So you see, this is where I say that you need to understand what it exactly means. Like it says in one of the hadith of the Prophet, there would be a time people will get to know that their family needs them from their hip. And the first bleeps and mobiles,
Yeah.
we used to put them on our hip.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to connect. What does it exactly mean? You know, so there are quite a few things which people have misconceptions on. That's why they can't reach the conclusions what they need to reach. So that's what it says.
Wow. Well, you also said once that was very interesting, and you connected all the religion from Abraham. What it was first time I heard from you. Yani. Can you tell a little bit about it? Because I think then it makes clear that what is dot connection and how all are connected and how everyone is in the same tribe. Then it will be like a global level.
You see, so you have Adam alayhi salam, and then you have generations after him spreading, and everything gets wiped out except for Nuh alayhi salam's kids. And then every tribe comes out of there. So you have the Caucasians at one side, and then you have the blacks at one side, and then you have the Middle Easterns at one side. Now, from that you have Ibrahim alayhi salam, which is, he was born in Iraq, and his wife Sarah from Iraq as well. And he got married, so he was ordered by God to go from there to the land of Palestine. Okay? And he had to pass from Egypt. And while passing from Egypt, they met the king there, and then the story happens between the king and Sarah, and so on. And then you have Hajar, the daughter of the king, getting married to Ibrahim alayhi salam as the second wife, and she has the first kid, Ismail alayhi salam. And then you have Ishaq from the first wife. So the second kid happens from the first wife. Now, the first kid, Ismail, settles in Arabia, where you have the Arabs coming in and so on. And then you have Ishaq, from where you get Bani Ishaq, Bani Israel, because Yaqub was nicknamed Israel, and that's why you have Bani Israel from there. And then you have a third wife of Ibrahim alayhi salam, which is not mentioned in Islam because the Islamic story is connected with Hajar.
Mm.
And a bit about Sarah and not Sarah actually, Ishaq and his kids. But then the third wife was not significant enough for Christianity to take a lead on that, or Judaism, or Hinduism, or Islam. But you have the third wife mentioned, that he had a third wife after the passing of Sarah, because Hajar had passed away, and then Sarah had passed away, and then you had the third wife. Now from here you have another 12 kids, whereby you have one of them called Kedar. Okay, now it's surprising, like, you know, when you read the Hindu scriptures, that you have the main two wives mentioned as well. So Ibrahim alayhi salam is mentioned in Judaism as Abraham, or in Christianity as Abraham. In Hindus it's Brahma.
Yeah.
So the first wife is Sarah in Islam,
Yeah.
Judaism, and Christianity. And in Hinduism, it's Saraswati. Then you have the second wife, which is Hajar, Hagar, Hagar, and then Gayatri in Hinduism. You know, the story of Nuh alayhi salam with the flood and all that, you have it in Hinduism as well. So that's Manu, and you know, God comes down as an incarnation in a shape of a fish and saves him from the flood and so on. And if you see the commonality of things, like there's a fasting of not speaking.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't have that in Islam, but there was in Judaism.
Yeah.
And how do we know that? That's in the Quran.
Exactly. Yeah.
When Maryam alayhi salam, she had Isa alayhi salam born, and you know, she asked Jibreel alayhi salam that what am I going to tell people?
Yeah.
So he said, like, pretend or tell them, like, you know, you're fasting or speaking. You know, and you have the same fast of not speaking in Hinduism as well. You have the 5 daily prayers in Islam. You have the 5 daily prayers in Zoroastrianism. The Zoroastrianism, the thread ceremony, you have it in Brahmins as well, in Hindus. So it's all connected if you really look at it. So the other thing which I actually wanted to touch on while talking about this is that we say Ahl al-Kitab are the people on whom the book was revealed. How many books are there? How many are there in the Quran?
For us, 4 is mentioned.
6 are mentioned. Yes. So you have the Quran, you have the Zabur,
Yeah.
you have the Injil, you have the Tawrah, and then you have Suhuf Ibrahim, and then you have Suhuf Musa. Now, if you remember, if you read Rahiq al-Makhtoum and all these, about the life of the Prophet and stuff, you'll get to know that the Prophet used to pray in cave of Hira, okay? And when he used to pray, what he used to pray, how did he used to pray? You see, if you really look deep into it, he used to pray according to Abrahamic religion, which was based on Suhuf Ibrahim. And who has the Suhuf Ibrahim? The Hindus, Vedas.
Wow.
Because that Vedas is scrolls of Abraham, which in Arabic is Suhuf Ibrahim. It's the books of Abraham. So, and it tells you, if you read Vedas very well, it tells you there's a cubic house somewhere in the skies whereby angels go around it and everything. And it tells you a lot similar to what miswak, for example, for brushing your teeth, is also mentioned there, and its value, medicinal values and stuff. So there are quite a few things which you'll find in Vedas which are very similar to Islam. So this is the book according to which they used to pray. But what happened in the time of the Prophet, or before the time of the Prophet? Idols. And this idol worship was actually unknown to Arabia. There was a guy who went to a certain place. It's a lot of detail, so I'm just cutting it short. So a guy went to a certain place. He liked the idols there. He brought them to Arabia, and people started liking it, and people started naming them, and then they started worshipping them down the centuries and stuff. Arabia had never known a foreign god. So this was later on brought in and stuff. And by the time
last
the Prophet
was
born-
Musa alayhi salam. Yani.
Sorry?
The last was Musa alayhi salam.
In
The idol worship with the gold.
no, that's the Israelites. I'm talking about
after
Arabia.
That, Arabia was not there.
Arabia, there was nothing. They never
After
had,
Ibrahim,
because Ismail alayhi salam, the way he set up the Arabia worship and everything, everyone was a Muslim. But then when they brought in, because they were worshipping according to Suhuf Ibrahim. And then these idols came in. Somebody got excited, overexcited about these idols and statues and stuff, and he brought them, like, they look really cool. The Greek statues and stuff, and then they brought and they shaped them in an Arabian way, and that's how the idol worship starts. But before that, it wasn't nothing, and that's why in the Kaaba, by the time the Prophet was born, there were like 360 idols there and stuff. So it just went downhill basically, because Iraq was not Arab; they were Sumerians. That was the first civilization in the world, and Ibrahim alayhi salam comes from Sumerian civilization originally, or of Chaldees, as is mentioned in the Bible as well. But we in Islam, we don't have that much details because that doesn't concern us. What concerns us is that we look at what the Prophet has given us, and that also we don't look at. We just like ignore basically most of the times.
I wish I could take more time on you at least, you know. So I would like to have at least some information so that eschatology subject will be very interesting today. So before we again jump into it, wanted to know why you took this step to know about it, and what do you see from this after learning from this? Don't you think it's overwhelming for you, and it's scary also? it's kind of like, and you are a guy who has taught many people how to do dawah, and you have been working under Ahmad Deedat. If you can touch on that, and how did you end up on this subject also?
Okay. I was 14 and I was memorizing the Holy Quran. And one of my teachers was actually like, he's like, you know what? I see something in you. I'm like, what? He's like, you are a very quick learner. You're a super quick learner. Have you heard of Ahmad Deedat? I'm like, no. I was only 14 and I've never heard of a person who, and he's like, okay, if you get a chance, watch his videos. I was like, I want to know who this guy is and why my teacher is telling me that. I was 15 and I started working Discover Islam, 15 and a half, something like that. And kids at that age, actually before that, while I was memorizing the Holy Quran, I got a few booklets of Ahmad Deedat. And what I did was I went through them and I was like, this is interesting. So people used to spend pocket money at that time playing video games, and internet had just started at that time, and people were going to these internet cafes and stuff and buying music and buying like tickets to cinemas and stuff. 14-year-old kids, what they do. This is back then. Now kids are even advanced at the age of 7, 8. Mashallah alayhum. So what I did was I went and I bought a Bible with my pocket money.
Okay.
And that was my first ever purchase with the pocket money. And I started reading, and I was reading, and I was reading, and I was connecting it with the books of Ahmad Deedat. I was like, okay, I think I'm ready enough. It was only like 2 weeks. I was like, I'm ready enough. I'll go to a church. So this church was right opposite Farooq Mosque. I forgot the name. It's next to the American Mission Hospital.
Yeah, I don't know the church name, but
I forgot the name. So there was this pastor. It's higher than a priest, and his name was Anwar Khan, and he was here for a very, very long time. I don't know whether he's still alive or not, but yeah. So him and his wife used to preach in the church. So I went there. Imagine a 14-year-old kid wearing a thobe and the Islamic cap and everything, and carrying a Quran and carrying a Bible on the side, and going to the church and saying to the guy, okay, well, I'm a Muslim, pretending I'm a Muslim and I wanted to convert. So I wanted to know a few things. We started talking and talking and talking. So the only thing where I actually stopped going there was because they were annoyed because they did not have an answer of a question. And the question, I'll tell you. And imagine I'm talking about the story after like 20 years or something, more than 20 years. So the Bible says that Ibrahim alayhi salam was 86 years old when Ismail was born. Okay? And he was 100 years old when Ishaq alayhi salam was born. So Ismail alayhi salam at that time was 14. Now, 3 years after this, so Ishaq alayhi salam turns 3, and the Bible says that Ismail was playing and mocking Ishaq alayhi salam. So Sarah was a bit paranoid that, this kid is going to be like, always teasing my kid and everything, and he's going to take all the money and all the rights of my husband and everything. Obviously made up, because that does not happen in the Prophet's families and stuff. So Sarah was like, okay, so she goes to Ibrahim alayhi salam and says, well, you know what? Throw the kid out and the mother. Now in Islam, what do we have? That this never happened because Ismail was a kid when he was left in Mecca, a baby.
Yeah.
And when Ishaq was born and everything, he never knew Ismail alayhi salam. So this was like something else of a story. So when I read it, I was in a shock. But then I was asking a question. So what happens? I said, he was 86? He said, yeah. And when Ismail was born? He said, yeah. Okay. But he was 100 when when Ishaq was born? He said, yeah. I said, okay. So he was 3 years old when Ismail was thrown out? And he goes, yeah. So I said, what does Ismail's age become? He said, 17. I said, read the next verse in the Bible. So the next verse in the Bible says, Ibrahim alayhi salam took a pot of water and he hung it on the shoulder of Hajar at one side, and he picked up the baby Ismail and put on the shoulder of Hajar and sent them away. I said he was 17 in the last verse. So how did he turn? How did he put a 17-year-old Ismail on the shoulder of Hajar? Was she a superwoman? Superpowers? And he started checking the other Bibles. So he opened up 3-4 versions of the Bible. So the Bible which I was holding was the promise. And it clearly says he put the baby on the shoulder. While the other one, it says he put Ismail on the shoulder. But regardless, I said, so now how can a 17-year-old guy be put on the shoulder? He said, because Ismail was sick. I said, what was Hajar then? How can she carry a 17-year-old guy, a fully grown guy, with his maximum height on the shoulder? I said, also, if you read the next verses, so I said, read the next verse. So it says that, she took him to the desert and there was no water and she put the guy aside and she was running for water. I said, if I am 17, so my mom should be at least like 37. It's my age to run, not hers. I should be finding water for her, not she finding for me. And he was quiet. I saw the shock and disappointment in his face and I left from there. That was the last time I ever saw him. And I was like, so then I started working Discover Islam, and Discover Islam had a lot of videos. This is where I actually picked up on all the videos. I used to take each one home, watch it, understand it, memorize it, and give it back. So all the videos, 187 videos, I had memorized them, each and every argument. And that was over a period of 6 months. Like I would take one day, if I didn't understand it that well, I would open the Bible, I would open his book, I would watch that, and so on. This is how I learned from him. Then there was a chance that I got to see him. And I got gifted Bibles and stuff from him, and he asked me questions, and I was able to like give him all what he needed. He's like, you are twice better than I am. So this was a huge honor, because I knew I would reach a level where, because of the pronunciation, because of the way I pick up. Like if you see Zakir Naik, for example, he can quote you stuff in Hebrew which Ahmad Didat said, but he would make mistakes, a lot of mistakes. But when you look at Aramaic, because that's the language in which Injil was revealed, and that's the language which Isa alayhi salam spoke. So there's Lord's Prayer, something like we read Surah Al-Fatiha, they read Lord's Prayer. So if you, everyone knows Surah Al-Fatiha. So if you go back to the testimony of the Jews, so both Ahmad Didat and Zakir Naik, they stop at this point where they say, Shama Israel Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, Lord our God is but one. Lord our God is but one God. But then this is not the only thing what Jews say. They continue. So you say, Shama Israel Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. We ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavecha uvechol nafshecha uvechol merdecha. So you have to pray to Him with all your mind, with all your heart, with all your soul. So you have to continue the whole thing. Then I got into the Lord's Prayer, O our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be your name, and everything, which the Christians have to read. But ask any Christian to be able to, even the priests in Bahrain, if you go to any of the priests and say, okay, read it in the language of Jesus, Aramaic. They can't read it. It's Abun de Bashmei and Qaddash ma Qtaythim al Kuthar Nehve
This is a
Salyana.
disclaimer that this is not scripted. This is from his memory. MashaAllah.
So I was with quite a few things. But same thing I did with Hinduism as well. where I asked one of the so this is actually funny. What's happening in London? These guys, the one who dance around with Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, and one of the guys is like, so Ram was God, and he's like, yeah. I'm like, but what about what Ram said? He said, what did he say? I said, he said, I'm a man born as son to Dashrath, nothing more. And he said, no, he didn't say that. I said, open. I'll show you. It says, Atman and Manushya Manne Dashrath Atmajam. In Sanskrit. The guy didn't want to talk to me. He's like, it's my time for lunch. I'll go have lunch and I'll come back. And he never came back. And I left from there. So I've had like, these funny occasions and stuff. So this is quite interesting when I was in the initial years. I'm talking about 14 to the age of 17. So I got deep into it when I had these Bible thumpers and these people who talk, what is it called? Missionaries. They would knock the door and say, accept Jesus as your
In
God
Bahrain?
and all that. No, in the UK. That they are that Jesus is Son of God and all that, and He died for your sins and everything. And we had like a lot of debates and stuff. So I had a chance of converting or reversing these three of the priests as well. So it was quite interesting. The most difficult people to come to Islam is the Jews. It's so much pride. It's so much pride. Atheists are not that difficult. It just all because they have logic, because they've already completed the first part of La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. They've completed the first part, which is La ilaha.
Yeah.
You have to put in them illallah,
Yeah.
and then bring them to Muhammad Rasulullah.
Yeah.
So it's all your job. This is what you're here for. That's why it says in the Quran, Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa. I've sent you as an ambassador for me, as a khalifa for me.
Yeah.
And what are we going to do? We're not doing what we are supposed to be doing. And exactly what Ahmadiyya used to say. You've been given a job. God doesn't need you. He doesn't need me. We're nothing.
Yeah.
But then if we do his job, do a prophet's job, earn a prophet's reward. And it says in the Quran, وَإِن تَتَوَلَّوْا يَسْتَبْدِلْ قَوْمًا غَيْرَكُمْ ثُمَّ لَا يَكُونُ أَمْثَالَكُمْ. If you turn away from your duties and responsibilities, Allah will bring a people in your place which will not be like you. You have to do your work. So the moment you go out, spreading the knowledge and trying to tell people about Islam, that's the biggest thing. You don't start with, okay, this is how you pray, and you go into those critical details which are not needed at that time. Let the person first sit in the bus, tell him what his destination is, then tell him how to sit in the bus. What are the rules of that? If you haven't shown him the destination, you haven't put him in the bus, why are you telling him the rules inside the bus?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. This is where we have a problem. And moving on from there, I go on to eschatology, 6-7 years back, because that was something which I really wanted to know. Where am I headed next? What is our purpose? When is this all ending? Where are we exactly in the time frame from the Prophet ﷺ till Yawm al-Qiyamah? Where exactly are we right now? And it turns out we are the nearest people. We are nearly the final people, final generation before Yawm al-Qiyamah.
Yeah.
And it depends on how you analyze it.
Yes.
So yeah.
This is where you ended up.
Yes. And so I initiated with the topic of Dajjal. And then actually before that, I was deeply involved with Ya'juj and Ma'juj. Who are they exactly?
I think for this subject, there are very few materials to really, get that proper proof. And do you think the materials you read is pretty good enough to really prove it?
Your biggest material or your biggest source is the Quran itself.
Yeah.
Surah Al-Anbiya, verse number 95, it says, وَحَرَامٌ عَلَىٰ قَرْيَةٍ أَهْلَكْنَاهَا أَنَّهُمْ لَا يَرْجِعُونَ. It's forbidden for a people to come back to an area, a village, a city, once it has been destroyed. They will never return. Which city is it? Which people are these? Give me what comes to your mind. These people will never return when the city has been destroyed. What do you think is the city, and which people is the Quran talking about?
Are you talking about the group of people from Israel?
Jews will never return to Jerusalem after it has been destroyed. When was it destroyed? The 1st century.
Yeah.
Right? After Isa alayhi salam was taken up.
Then,
In the year 27 AD, Isa alayhi salam was taken up.
so after that, they did
The-
not return. Yeah.
It was destroyed. Jerusalem was destroyed.
Yeah.
The Jews were dispersed around the world. And the Quran says they will never return. Okay?
Okay.
The next verse, verse number 96, it says, حتى إذا فتحت يأجوج ومأجوج وهم من كل حدب ينسلون. Until the gates or the doors of Ya'juj Ma'juj are open, and Ya'juj Ma'juj will come down from everywhere. The Jews will be able to return. That's a condition put in the Quran. Now, the Jews returned in 1948. They started returning in 1917 after Balfour Declaration. They were fully ready to come in there after the World War. 1947, they were fully there. 1948, they declare a state. They were not supposed to return according to the Quran unless Ya'juj Ma'juj is set free. So if the Jews have returned, where is Ya'juj Ma'juj? Still behind the wall?
So it's now question arises here. This is something mind-blowing. How do you prove then? Yani, just by logic, how do you prove? Yani,
It says, look, the Quran is telling you very clearly. The Ya'juj Ma'juj will be set free and they will come down from everywhere.
Yeah.
That means their rule will come down from everywhere. Not they themselves. The rule will be everywhere. Which was the biggest empire in the world?
Which timeline you're talking about?
Any timeline. The biggest empire in the world was which one?
My knowledge about this is not that great, but I'm believing like our Ottoman Empire was like biggest one, or
Okay.
maybe it's a 700
Okay.
only.
That's the first question. The second question is, what is Balfour Declaration? Have you heard of it?
Declaration.
Balfour Declaration. It was in 1917. UK comes up with Balfour Declaration that the Jews are supposed to have their homeland
Yeah.
in Palestine, and it'll be called Israel. So they wanted to set up a Jewish state in Israel, in Palestine, which would be called Israel. Who made that? The UK, right? What was the biggest empire in the world? British Empire.
Yes. They don't even have Independence Day, man. This is something.
British Empire.
Yes.
Have you seen time lapse?
It's the biggest empire, not just timeline makes you the biggest empire. They have.
They were the biggest empire. Sun never
They
sets
are-
in the British Empire.
Yes.
Remember? Now, have you seen the time lapse of their colonization? Or you haven't? From the 18th century till
Yeah.
or till 1975, have a look.
Yes.
Check it on YouTube. You'll see the time lapse of their ruling, like how they ruled. Okay? You'll see they took over one country and the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth, and they were all around the world.
Yes.
Now,
Makes
let me
sense.
repeat the ayah. And they will come down from everywhere. Now, this is just to give you a bit of a background. Now, one of the questions which the Jews asked the Prophet was, tell us about the great traveler. Okay? And that was Dhul Qarnayn. He goes to the east of the known world. What was the known world at that time? Middle East. He goes to the east, which is Iran. He goes to the west, which is Palestine, Israel. And then he goes to the north. He reaches a place where nobody understands the language. They speak a totally different language. So they plead with Dhul Qarnayn that there are people who come from the north and they attack us and they steal our resources. They steal our resources. So Dhul Qarnayn makes a wall there. Okay? There was a certain people living there. And they were called Khazarians. Okay? Those people had no religion. They had to just go in, down, attack people, take their resources. I don't know if you remember that hadith. There's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ which says that he woke up once, scared. And he says, وَيْلٌ لِلْعَرَبِ, woe to the Arabs. The fitna of Ya'juj and Ma'juj is very close to them. To the Arabs, the fitna of Ya'juj and Ma'juj is very close to them. Today, a hole has been made in the wall, and he puts his hand down and he makes a circle like this. 1,440 years, something, has passed since this event, since the Prophet passed away. There was a hole made in the wall. If the hole was made then, what happened to the wall now?
By now it must have.
Exactly what the Quran is telling you. That's one thing. Second thing, if you check it, even on Wikipedia you check it, when did the Prophet pass away? 630 something.
If you measure in this one.
Okay, in
Okay,
AD.
yeah.
Okay. If you check, even on Wikipedia, for example, and you check about Khazarians, it says their kingdom started formation somewhere after 630 AD. And it's around the time of 625 something where the Prophet, where this hadith was said by the Prophet directly, that a hole has been made in that wall. Remember the hip thing I told you earlier?
Yeah.
The mobile thing? The hole means they have started forming their kingdom. That does not mean that there is a wall which exists still.
Yeah.
The wall in the Quran mentioned was made 3,000 or 2,000 years before the Prophet.
Yeah.
It wasn't there at the time of the Prophet. The Prophet is talking figuratively.
Yeah, figurative.
The hole which has been made is actually formation of the kingdom of Khazarians, which later on accepted Judaism and Christianity in the next 300-400 years. And these people termed themselves as something, which I'm not going to go into details now. I'll just tell you, it was something. And they started taking the rule of European countries. So their first attack was towards Italy, and then France, and then Germany, and then the UK. Okay? Now what happens once they've taken over the UK? They've taken over these European countries. They formed ruling families. What is the ruling family of the UK? Who are they? What is the last name of, what is the royal family's name of the UK? Windsor family, right? Windsor. They changed the name during the World War because their original name was Gothenburg something. Okay? German. Right? But if you trace them back, where do they go to? They go back to Khazarians. They go back to Khazarians. Trace them. Check it up. Their family line, it goes back to Germany, and then it goes to France, and it goes to Italy, and then it goes to Georgia, Turkey. This is the area where the Khazarians were. And this is how they took over. When they take over the UK, they have a Balfour Declaration to send back the Jews to the Holy Land. Okay? If you don't believe me that this is true, then I want anyone to challenge me in this and prove me wrong that there are two statues, Gog and Magog, in Guildhall in London. They were marched in every coronation ceremony, starting from Queen Victoria 600 years ago. Why are statues of Ya'juj and Ma'juj marched in every coronation ceremony of the Queen? Why? What's the connection?
Because they are from them, man.
Because they proudly say that we are from them. They proudly say that. Are we sleeping?
Yes, just still figuring out here.
Why don't we know this stuff?
Yes.
Why don't we know this? This is something on record. They are saying it themselves. We are proudly from Gog and Magog. And then they were the ones who did the Balfour Declaration to send the Jews back there. Now, let me tell you the verse in English. The two verses of Surah Al-Anbiya, verse number 95 and 96. And it's forbidden for the Jews to return to the city which has been destroyed, and they shall never return, unless Gog and Magog have been set free and they come down from everywhere. British Empire taking over everywhere, and they facilitate the Jews' return to the Holy Land. The Quran is clear. Which scholar, which alim, which sane person, which logical person can deny this or challenge this? No one. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Of course it
It's
does.
connected.
It's people following logic, people following proofs and evidence in front of them. Now, once I was like talking about this, and there was a guy who was saying to me, but it says that Ya'juj Ma'juj will be released only after Isa alayhi salam comes. And after this, the Dajjal thing happens and all that. I said, no. It says they will fight each other. And nobody will be able to defeat them except Allah because they have nuclear weapons.
Mm.
Isa alayhi salam will not be able to fight them because the Middle East does not have nuclear weapons.
Mm.
So God will punish them in such a way that the nuclear weapons are going to blow in their faces. And that's why it says that they will have a bad stench from them, and Allah will send a rain to wipe them away. It'll be like they have a disease coming from their necks, which only happens in nuclear explosions.
Yes.
It's there in the hadith. Why don't we read? I said, any other objections? And they're like, no, it all makes sense. You give me any objection to it. I want to hear something from your side. Give me an objection to what I said.
I'm just trying to, like, cover
Absorb.
myself, absorb it, this is something mind-blowing, in a way it is gonna benefit us to know this, if someone understands this, and I don't know whether we can do something about it.
Look, I'll tell you something. No, you can look. There's nothing you can do anything about the Ya'juj Ma'juj or the fight which is going to happen. Look, I'll give you other evidences from it. It says, they're going to drink from the Sea of Galilee. The first of them. Who's drinking from Sea of Galilee right now? The Jews, the converted Jews,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
The ones who came from Khazar, converted. They're staying there and they're drinking from there.
Mm.
It says when the last one of them passes from there, we'll say there used to be water here. It says now that it's going to finish very soon. Another 6 years, the water is gone. And it'll be in the world news that the water is finished. So the last ones, which the whole world will know, that's why it's there in the hadith of the Prophet, that the last ones will say there used to be water here. Because the first ones who started drinking was 1940s, and they died. Right? Most of them, they've died.
Mm.
They haven't lived, 1940 till today, but it's a long time. And by another 6-7 years, most of them would be dead. So the ones which we'll have now are the last ones, according to the whole scene.
Yeah.
Right? That's one of the things. What else was there? To connect the Ya'juj Ma'juj with them, about the nuclear weapons I told you. And yeah, there's nothing else that comes to my mind. Anything what comes to your mind? Something.
So I'm like, Yanni, what is the probability that we are going to enter dark age or maybe golden age again?
Golden age is with the return of Isa alayhi salam.
That's a golden age.
Of course.
So first will be the dark age.
Which becomes...
When I say dark age means, are we gonna have World War III?
Well, World War III begins with the coming of Imam Mahdi, right?
Mm.
It comes with that.
What is your prediction for that, Yanni?
Imam Mahdi, look, it says in the... I just remembered with regards to Ya'juj Ma'juj, it says in the hadith of the Prophet, even after they're coming out, you'll still be doing Hajj and Umrah. Right? We're still doing it. So that has no connection with the Ya'juj Ma'juj interfering with us and all that. Plus, it says that they used to steal resources of the people. Who takes the oil and resources of the Middle East?
Yeah.
Clear evidence of everything. With regards to Imam Mahdi, he has to come 3 years or 5 years or 7 years before Isa alayhi salam comes. And coming of Isa alayhi salam has been a point of discussion. People have their opinions. I have my own opinion. And there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, which actually most of the ulama say it's da'if. And but if it was da'if, I don't know why would it be mentioned in 14 different places. It's not there in Bukhari, it's not there in Muslim, but there are in other sources, 14 different sources which have exactly the same wordings, that my ummah is not going to last for more than 1,500 years. and we are in 1441, 42, something like that.
Yeah.
So count. And so 1442, and then minus the 40 years of Isa alayhi salam, minus the 7 years from his death to Yawm al-Qiyamah. How many are we left with? 13, roughly?
Yeah.
Less than 13. And then 7 years of, or 5 years or 3 years of Imam Mahdi. You minus from there. Let's say 7 years. How many are left with? 5, 6? Depends on how you look at it. It depends on how you do analysis. One of the last...
This thing will come under the eschatology.
Yes. How
This
do you
is how we
analyze this?
measure and
How do
see
you
the
analyze
pattern
this and everything? Yes. Even Dajjal, Masih al-Dajjal. Who is he? Where is he? How is he going to appear and
What
for
is
how long?
he, Annie?
He's a
Sometimes
human.
It's a human. He is a human.
He's a human. And he would try to take the throne of Sulaiman alayhi salam. And that's where the dream of Sulaiman alayhi salam comes, that he saw a dead person on his throne. So basically, as far as I think, I mean, this is not something where I would have any evidences of it or to be able to prove it, but as far as I think is he was a human. He had a deal with the jinns and shayateen to stay alive for as long as possible. So they will use his body basically. He wants to experience the most power and stuff. And he existed. He existed in the time of the Prophet. And this thing I can prove, that the Prophet met him. And we have in that hadith, but we don't read. Dajjal met the Prophet. He exists right now. We don't read. We don't pay attention.
He's a superhuman. Yeah.
No. He just, look, anyone who has a deal with the devil. Let me give you an example. Skull and Bones. Have you heard of it?
No.
Secret Society.
Okay.
George Bush was a member of it.
Yeah. Okay. big area to.
Most of these celebrities and stuff, how do they reach the maximum fame? How do they become super famous? Secret societies. They have to do certain things to be able to reach that level of fame. And that is pledging loyalty to the shaitan. Simple as that.
Because I think he's going to be an agent of shaitan, right? Basically.
Yes.
Biggest agent.
Yes. Because, but see, what makes sense is that he had a deal with the shaitan, with the jinns. And how do you know that? Remember there was a guy called Saf ibn Sayyad? There was a kid in the time of the Prophet. He was a Jewish kid. Umar ibn Khattab, he gets to know that there is a kid who matches the description of Dajjal. So he goes to the Prophet and says, well, I heard so-and-so. Let's go check him out. The Prophet said, okay. The Prophet walks there. So the Prophet is here with Umar ibn Khattab. The kid is here, and his house is there with his mother. So when she sees the Prophet with Umar walking up, she shouts at the kid, saying, the Prophet is coming. Muhammad is coming. Okay, get up. The Prophet said, if his mother didn't shout, a few more seconds, I would have known whether he's the Dajjal or not. Okay? The Prophet walks up to him and he says, do you believe I'm a prophet? And he says, you're the prophet of Gentiles, meaning non-Jews. He said, I'm hiding something in my heart. What is it? And Saf ibn Sayyad, he replies, Dukh. The Prophet pushed him away and he said, this is how far you can get. And he left. Umar ibn Khattab says, what were you hiding in your heart? And he said, it was dukhan. But the jinns he was communicating with would not be able to tell him the full thing. So that means he was communicating with, now this kid was communicating with the jinns. Now, Umar ibn Khattab says, he pulls out his sword and he says, I'll kill him. And the Prophet said, if he's the Dajjal, you can't kill him. Because only the Masih can kill him. And if he's not the Dajjal, his killing will not benefit you. So don't do it. The Prophet passes away. But before he passes away, they asked him, is he the Dajjal? The Prophet stayed quiet. Now, analyze this. Basic logic. If he was not the Dajjal, the Prophet would have clearly said it. He's not the Dajjal. Simple. But if the Prophet did not say, meaning he was not allowed to say that he was in fact the Dajjal. Simple. Then you read about this kid. After the death of the Prophet, he becomes a Muslim and he's going to Hajj and all of that and everything. So Sahaba are confused about him. We're always confused about him. And they say, tell us plainly whether you're Dajjal or not. He said, didn't the Prophet say that he would not have kids? I have wife and I have kids. Didn't the Prophet say he'll be a kafir and I'm a Muslim? Didn't the Prophet say that he will not be able to enter Makkah and Medina? Look, I'm coming out with you guys from Medina to Makkah. Right? They said, yeah. So they're convinced. Now what he says, the next thing what he says is, but I know where he is, Dajjal, and who he is. Now the Sahaba got even more confused. Okay? Then there was a battle in the time of Umar ibn Khattab. No, there was a battle in the time of Abu Bakr. And this guy went missing all of a sudden. In the war, he was not found, whether in the dead or living. When Umar ibn Khattab took over Iran, he found the guy, Saf ibn Sayyad, in Isfahan, wearing a Jewish locket and dancing with the Jews. Okay? And then he vanishes again and never to be seen. According to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where is Dajjal going to come from? Isfahan. Right? And then you have the explanation for Dajjal is going to be among you for 40 days. A day like a year, a day like a week, a day like a month. And the remaining days will be your days of counting. Who can explain that?
Can you explain, Yani?
A day like a year, a day like a month, a day like a week. You see, the Sahaba, they asked the Prophet, they said, so if a day is like a year, do we pray for the whole year? Like how many prayers are we going to pray in a day? The Prophet said, do according to your thinking. The Prophet did not say it plainly, what it means. It means, look, after the Prophet's death, because he's the last warning, he's the last Prophet, things would not have to wait for 1,400 years to happen. It would start happening at the time, right after the death of the Prophet. Slowly things would happen. So, what I see it as is this. This guy, this kid, he grew up, he vanished, and then he lived. He lived. He facilitated for the UK to become what it became. They ruled for 1,000 years. A day like a year is 1,000 years, which was the UK. And a day like a month, which is 100 years, the rule of the US. And a day like a week, which is 10 years, which is now the rule of Israel. And when that ends, it's 37 days remaining, which will be 37 normal days. So we only see him for 37 days. Is there any other explanation? Let me give you an example. Let me explain you a bit more. There is a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ about Tamim ad-Dari. He was a converted Christian who was talking about going to an island, and he finds this huge monster guy, Jassasa, with hair and all of that. Jassasa means spy. Okay? And he's all covered in hair and everything. And he points to a certain monastery that Dajjal is going to be there. So they go there and they talk to him, and he tells about a few predictions and stuff. And then he said, I will be set free soon. And he connects it to a few events. Now this is what I'll leave it to you and to people who are listening and watching, that they read through these events and try and connect. But I'll give you the basic. Which country was known for monastery? The Sahaba, they reach an island. UK is an island. Jassasa, spy. UK is the country known for spying MI6. Well-known fact. He was all hairy. Wires. Technology. Make sense?
Wires technology in those days?
Wires. So basically, the guy is hairy, full of hair.
Yeah.
It's symbolism of wires, of technology.
Okay.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Exactly the mobile thing which I told you, by the flying donkey which I told you, which is a warplane of Dajjal and everything. So you have to be able to connect. This is my view. But let me give you something of a bigger shock. Is Dajjal going to have two eyes or one eye?
We are told like it will be One eye will be like a damage.
He will have two normal eyes.
Yeah, but he will not be able to see any.
Let me
So
tell you
what-
this. He will have two normal eyes,
Hmm.
two perfectly normal eyes. It will not be like a bulging grape or
Hmm,
anything.
hmm,
The hadith tell you that. The hadith tell you that.
hmm,
But it's not going to be like that. You know why?
hmm, hmm.
Because it says Dajjal is going to claim to be God.
Okay.
Now, anyone, even if he's a stupid person, he would know if this guy is God, why can't he fix his own
Fix
eye,
your
which
own
is
eye.
bulging like a grape?
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yes.
The Prophet said, Dajjal is going to have one eye to see people. And know your God, your Rabb, is not one-eyed. Allah watches everything
Yeah.
from inside you and outside you. Around the world, around the universe, everything you can imagine.
Hmm.
Everything He knows. How does Dajjal watch everything?
Don't tell me it's all the cameras which he's watching.
Right. Um, what is a bulging grape?
No idea, man.
So you have a grape,
Hmm.
right? A round grape.
Hmm.
Then you have a long grape. Okay. Bulge is basically this,
Yeah.
like curved,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
What color is a grape? Greenish, purple,
Greenish,
purple,
purple, yeah.
green. Yeah. This curvature. What
Yeah.
does camera lens look like?
Yes.
What color is it?
It's like black and
Greenish,
greenish,
purple, like a
yeah.
bulging grape.
Mm.
See the symbolism? That's why it says he will watch things with cameras. And your Rabb doesn't watch cameras.
Doesn't need.
But the Prophet did not say it at that time that it's cameras because people wouldn't understand.
Mm. Mm.
It's like, let me give you an example. Black hole. We recently got the pictures of the black hole. Right? Now, this analysis has been done a lot, but people have not paid attention at it.
Mm.
It says there is a tree in heaven, Sidrat al-Muntaha, right?
Yeah.
And that tree is at the end of the universe. And when you cross that, you meet God.
Yeah.
That's exactly where the Prophet went for the Mi'raj,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Jibreel said, if I pass through it,
Mm.
my wings will burn. You go. He can't pass through that. What was it? That's Sidrat al-Muntaha, passing from there. What is it exactly? A black hole.
Mm.
You're
Mm.
passing from one place to another,
Yeah.
right? And it tells you in Surat Najm about the details of it. There is a video on YouTube, you'll easily find it. It's called There Is No Clash. This is the name of the channel. And it proves to you that this Sidrat al-Muntaha is actually a black hole. It gives you all the proofs. You're more than welcome to challenge it. So I can give you my opinions, I can give you my proofs, but then it's up to you at the end of the day where or how do you perceive this and how you're going to take it and use this knowledge to be able to build on it. Because I would only talk about things where I'm 100% sure. If I'm not sure, I'm going to say I'm not sure about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know? So this is where I am with Dajjal right now. I have my timelines and time frames with Isa alayhi salam, and it says in the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that when you see the Sea of Galilee drying up, expect the Son of Mary descending. And where is he going to descend? Umayyad Mosque. Why? Because Yahya alayhi salam, 2,000 years ago, he was announcing to people that Masih is here. And he was telling people Isa alayhi salam is the Masih, and the Yahud did not believe.
Mm.
So his head was cut off, and he was buried under the Umayyad Mosque. That's where his maqbara is, or the grave is. Isa alayhi salam is supposed to descend on the minar of that mosque.
Mm.
So when he comes down there, symbolic, he's proving people, he doesn't need to say this, he's proving himself when he's coming down that what this guy who is buried here, Yahya alayhi salam, said 2,000 years ago that I'm the Masih, I'm confirming it.
Mm.
So that's why he will be brought back down there. And from there he will march to Jerusalem. You see, it's all connected. It's about how fast your brain moves work. What do you understand? How do you understand? How do you connect to
This
things?
prediction thing, these things, I don't know how many people will get it.
Not many.
Yes.
Not many. It's look, you're more than welcome to challenge anything. I mentioned about Safi ibn Sayyad. Check on YouTube, hear his story, read books. If you can't read books, listen to YouTube stories, see who this guy is, confirm everything what I said. But Ya'juj and Ma'juj, where I connected it with the British Empire, prove me wrong. I would even challenge, and I have done this in the past and I'm still doing it. I'll pay 10,000 dinars to anyone who can challenge me on Ya'juj and Ma'juj not being the British Empire. Like British Empire or British, it's like the ruling government or the ruling families. This is a part of it. This is a part of it. The whole Ya'juj Ma'juj is all around the area, and that is a separate discussion altogether. Then, the Quran only mentions things which are which concern you. It doesn't mention you things which it doesn't concern you, like about dinosaurs and cockroaches and things like this. But it does mention a lot about Fir'aun. Right? It says that Fir'aun, when he was dying, and he says that I become a Muslim and all that, and God spoke to him directly. It says in the Quran, it says, الآن وقد عصيت قبل وكنت من المفسدين. Now, you want to like turn back on what you did, and just a while ago, you were an aggressor. You're an oppressor. Right? Somebody who creates fasad. اليوم ننجيك ببدنك لتكون لمن خلفك آية. Today I will save you in your body to be a sign for people to come after you. His body was not found for more than 3,000 years. How could he be a sign? His body was found in 1898, the same year Zionism was formed, which led to the Jews returning to Israel. The British family, the Balfour Declaration, the British Empire starting decline, and all of that, all started from 1898. Yeah. This is what Allah is telling you, that this is going to be a sign for you, for people to come after you. When your body is found, the signs begin. And it's only for the wise people to be able to understand that, which many people don't. So, as I said, whatever I've said, people need to be able to build on that. People who are wise, they know what I'm saying makes sense. And they need to build on this. Otherwise, prove me wrong. Anything. What I said about Dajjal, prove me wrong. That these are phases. A day like a year is a phase, 1,000 years. A day like a month, 100 years. Prove me wrong. I'm open for a challenge. Even this, when it comes to Ya'juj Ma'juj, when it comes to Isa alayhi salam. Well, I haven't really discussed about that because this is my opinion about the dates and stuff. But people are free to dig into it. Especially this Palestinian scholar, which passed away in 2001, 2002, the one who was disabled, Ahmed Yassin. He was once asked a question about this, that about the end of times and stuff, and he mentions a year. People need to dig into it, find out. If he was really a scholar, if you believe that scholars, we don't really have real scholars right now, go back to the older ones. Find out what they said. Forget about the differences of praying like this, or praying like this, or praying like this. Forget about that. Allah, at the end of the day, in Yawm al-Qiyamah, is not going to ask you, how did you pray like this and like this? It's about your niyyah. It says in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that when you're praying, you're standing in front of the King of Kings. So how do you stand in front of a king? Like this. Yes. Like this. Yes. Like this. Yes. Like this. Yes. You can stand any way you want. It's on your intention. Unless the king has instructed a code. The Prophet never instructed a code. It's about praying 5 times a day. It's about intention. It's about cleanliness. It's about dedication. It's about how much are you putting into that prayer, into your salah.
Yeah.
It's not about you standing there. You're standing. Okay, let's say the code is this: that you stand there and you're keeping your head like this, and you're thinking, okay, I have one shop and this electricity bill is not paid and all that. That doesn't work that way. That's what you're going to be questioned about. You're not going to be questioned about, okay, what were you wearing? Okay, why it was black? Why it was green? Why was this? Why your arms were like this? That's not the questions.
Yeah.
People are worried about wrong stuff and
Mm.
committing bigger stuff,
Mm. Mm.
bigger mistakes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's from my side. Anything else you wanted to ask me? I think that's a lot of information for now.
Yeah. Before I conclude, I wish I could ask more questions and everything, but uh, what do you see for the current scenario, especially the case which is happening right now? How do you relate, especially with Al-Aqsa, and how we are going to have any? Uh, are we going to get affected from this, which is happening?
Look, this has been going on since 1920s.
Of course, it's not about like which side we are going to take. It's a topic of discussion where we will have people will be like, "Yani, okay, this is white and black thing." No, it's not about that now. It's about something which is gonna affect us or not, because we don't know what's happening there in detail. We don't know the whole story. Everyone is having their own stories, and everybody is confused. Being a human, I will definitely want to see every human being in a good state, and not just like fighting like this.
Look, there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that a war will begin in Syria and it won't end, or actually, it would end in one place and begin in another. And it will end in that place and begin in another. And it won't end completely until Imam Mahdi comes.
Mm.
The war started in 2011. Has it stopped yet? 11 years on. And it's not going to stop. The hadith is telling you, wait, basically, for the Imam Mahdi. So wait. That's one thing. Second thing, with regards to Al-Aqsa, or the Jewish side, or the Palestinian side, and all of that, this has been happening. That land has seen this from the time of Jalut, Goliath. Okay, where Dawood alayhi salam, representing the Jews, have killed Jalut, representing the Palestinian side. Things have changed over time, people's religions have changed, ethnicities have changed, and so on. But that land is full of blood.
Yes.
And we've been witnessing since we were kids.
Mm.
And it's happening since before that. It's been happening for 100 years now, over 100 years now. It started in 1920, 21. And it's now we're 2021. You are only supposed to take the side which your government tells you. That's the hadith of the Prophet. You follow the land of the country you're in.
Mm. Mm.
The government tells you peace with Israel. We have peace with Israel. It tells you protest for Palestinians. Protest for Palestinians. It tells you don't associate with them. You don't associate with them. Because it says, there was a guy who asked a question to the Prophet, even if the ruler is bad, and the Prophet said, even if the ruler is bad, unless and until he's establishing prayers among you. You see, we have the rulers who are establishing prayers. That's what we need to check. We cannot ask them or point fingers at them or criticize them. Okay, you're wrong, you're wrong. No, you can't. Your religion does not allow you that. Okay? Plus, talking of bad, now, you see the things which Bahrain especially, forget about every other country, Bahrain has done, especially in this pandemic, giving free care, free treatment, free checkup and everything, and the goodie bag you get with if you're infected and stuff, and the hospital and all that, which government has done. None. Free month, free electricity and water. His Majesty the King and the Crown Prince, they have been doing the max they can. And then you have the political environment outside the countries which affect Bahrain, because Bahrain is not a country which can live on its own. It has to depend on the money from outside, aid from outside. And they have to balance this. They have to balance this, you know, and trying to balance this, there are a lot of complications. So you see the good, what the government has been doing. Praise is the last thing you check, you know. You have to follow what the government tells you. Yeah. And this is what we are saying yes to. When the government had a peace deal, you don't start blaming the government for it. You don't start objecting, criticizing, insulting the government for that. you feel bad about something which is against the government, you say it in your heart. That's your deen, that's your religion. But then when the government tells you, allows you to protest in favor of Palestinians, go ahead and do that. Vent your anger out. Say whatever you want to say. That's what they were doing in the past few days. So we cannot take sides right now.
Yeah.
You see, any khilafah, caliphate being established before the coming of Imam Mahdi will not happen. The hadith is telling us all bogus. And that's what we have faced in the form of ISIS.
Yeah.
Because khilafah cannot be established, because it says in the hadith of the Prophet clearly that you have a time where you have khilafah and it will be taken away from you. And then it will be inherited rule, which was the Umayyad dynasty and this one and that one and so on. And then you have biting kingdoms. And then you have khilafah returning on the sunnah of the Prophet. You know, so unless Imam Mahdi comes, you cannot think of like establishing khilafah. How? What? You're going to attack the rulers? You're going to go against your governments? You can't. You can't. So you have to be someone who understands this thing very clearly. When Imam Mahdi comes, all the governments will unite. Everyone is going to unite. You think Imam Mahdi appears today and the government of Bahrain or government of Qatar or government of Oman will go against him? Of course not. It's our religion. We have to follow him. And the Prophet said, when he said the event happens where the army comes from the north to attack Imam Mahdi and there's an earthquake and it's taken inside the heart of the earth. When you see that happening, join the Mahdi, even if you have to crawl over the ice. So we have to wait until that happens. We can't do anything. We can't go fight. We can't go do things which the government doesn't allow. So there are a lot of things which people need to understand. But the main thing is, the Prophet ﷺ, when he said, when Iraq splits into three, get ready for Yawm al-Qiyamah. How are we getting ready? That's the biggest question. Do you understand? Where are we right now? Where are we heading to? Our prayers is on one side. Our loyalties to Muslims around the world is another side. But then your preparation for Yawm al-Qiyamah, because you are going to face your Lord, your Rabb, your Creator, your Sustainer, with your deeds. Not what your government did, not what the other governments did with your people.
Yeah.
Because it says in the Quran very clearly that people on that day will say, take my wife and take my kids, but spare me the mess or the horrors of this day. It says it very clearly. So depends now how do people take this as and build from it.
What's your message for everyone?
Exactly what I said, the last hadith of
it's
the
not-
Prophet. Get ready for Yawm al-Qiyamah.
That's a message, and you have.
Yes, because look,
It has
you
to
have
be
all the signs
always.
here.
Even it doesn't matter whether we are going to have it in few days or not. Are we really preparing for it every time?
No, because we are
Everyone
thinking,
is going
okay,
to die.
minor signs have all happened, major signs are still going to happen, and we are waiting, when is that going to happen? Like, who told you major signs have not happened? Did the Prophet give you a time frame of this? Okay, did he give you a list? That first this is going to happen, then this is going to happen, then this is... No. He's given you specifics of certain things, yes. He didn't tell you that Ya'juj Ma'juj is going to be released after Isa alayhi salam. He didn't tell you that the Hajj will stop after Isa alayhi salam. He said, near the time of Yawm al-Qiyamah, Hajj will be abandoned. What happened with the Hajj last year? It was abandoned. What happened? What is going to happen with the Hajj this year? It's going to be abandoned. A clear sign. That's one of the major signs, right?
Yeah.
It's happened. It's right in front of you.
It's not like abandoned completely, right? People are
Does
doing
it say in the hadith of the Prophet that it'll be abandoned completely? It doesn't.
Okay. Interesting.
It's happening. It's happening. It's in steps.
Okay.
Right now, people are not being allowed to go for Hajj. But then it says when Imam Mahdi comes, people will be robbed and killed during Hajj because there will be no security. Because everything will be in a panic. Until then, how many Hajj will be abandoned? That's the question. So see the signs. It's just because see, your ticking clock is from the time when the Jews returned to Jerusalem. Then is Iraq war. Then is the Syria war. Then is Syria and Yemen troubles. And then the next is what? Imam Mahdi. Yajuj, Majuj. It depends on what you believe in. They're still hiding behind a wall, or I don't know. And they'll come out from Wall of China, which is too short anyway. Where are these people going to power? Are they Chinese?
Yeah.
Imagine Chinese people running around and killing people and drinking waters of the seas and everything, and all the horrors what we are listening to. It's not that horrific as what we see. You see, it's about imagination. And I'll end with this. It says there are portals. Okay? Portals to heaven. Like there are gates to heaven, sky. So the first heaven, second heaven, third heaven, fourth heaven, so on. Why did the Prophet ﷺ did not go to Mi'raj from Mecca? Why did he go from Jerusalem? Why did the Jewish books say that it's the closest thing to heaven? Portals, openings. You pass from here, you can go to the first heaven, second heaven, that route, or you can go to the other route, which is direct access to Allah. How do you prove that? When you die, your ruh is taken out. It goes to Allah directly, right? Does it pass through heavens? No. No. I haven't read it, unless somebody can show me that. But then, that's my opinion. That's not something I can prove.
It's
or
also
something.
something kind of spiritual journey.
Yeah,
also.
you see, these portals, you don't know how exactly they look like. You can imagine it as iron gates, right? You can imagine it as fire or smoke opening up.
Light, something,
It could be anything.
anything.
But then remember, it says in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that Ya'juj and Ma'juj have got gates. How were those gates? It says حتى إذا فتحت يأجوج. They're opened up. Opening is only for the doors and gates. It's not for a wall,
Yeah.
right? You have other doors mentioned. There are doors of Jannah. If there are doors, there must be keys. If there are no keys, anyone can run into the door. How will the malaika stop them? It's about how you imagine stuff. Like the Prophet said, he said, there would be a time where people from their dish, on the plates, from their dish, they would be able to see what's happening in the world. That's not this dish, that's that dish. Dish antenna, which started the whole thing. Connect. This is what we don't do. This is what we as Muslims. Unfortunately, I would say this, our ulama have failed us in this. The modern ulama have failed us in this. They talk about the types of tawheed. They talk about the types of this and the types of that, which I've never heard in my life, which is not mentioned. The terminology is not mentioned in the Quran or the hadith of the Prophet. They would focus a lot on that, but they would forget that the Prophet said, get ready for Yawm al-Qiyamah. How do you get ready for that? By knowing the types of this and the types of that? How? No. You do your fara'id, your obligatory stuff, your hajj, your prayers, your fasting and everything. Go talk to people about Islam. You try and understand, where am I heading? Your life is not to live with your wife and your kids and your business and everything. And on Day of Judgment, you'll be asking Allah to take them all and to save you from the headache of that. How are you living? What are you getting ready with? That's the biggest thing. That's the biggest question.
Stay tuned. We will get back to you, and we did not really do justice on the subject, or especially to know Omar is going to be. Maybe I have to make a special appointment and get back to you guys with another show. Yani. Till then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much.